Hello, welcome back to the webinar series, the multidimensional approach to building your personal brand. Joining me is a very special guest. He is the professor. He is a professor at the Nashville Film Institute. He also just launched a brand new podcast, the Bleav in Vandy Football Podcast. And he is here to share his wisdom and knowledge with you about marketing yourself and trying to land that dream career of yours. But before we get started in the meat of the show, Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself. He is Matthew Perkins, by the way.
Hey, Corey. Thanks for having me on. Like you said, my name is Matthew Perkins, and I do teach film studies, audio engineering, and film business, including marketing yourself at the Nashville Film Institute. I've been there for about 2 years. Previous to that, I got an undergraduate degree at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I double majored in communication arts with a focus on radio, television, and film, and French. I then went to get my master's in cinema and media studies at UCLA, where I was a graduate teaching fellow before I moved to Nashville to start working at NFI. So I've been in and around the film production business for about 10 years. And actually probably even more than that, I got my first gig working for ESPN back in 2005. So 15 years. And I have done a bunch of different jobs in and around the film and media production industry, but more so than anything, I am an educator, and I've been teaching a lot about marketing yourself because it is such a vital skill for media professionals to have. You have to be able to get your name out there if you're going to be hired to do, bigger and bigger gigs.
Absolutely, and I certainly thank you for coming on board. This is going to be a huge thing for the students in the Metro Nashville Public Schools. It's going to be a part of the Metro Nashville Public School virtual summer experience. So that'll be where this webinar series launches. This will also be something that is built into my regular course throughout the school year. So different facets and different modules will be launched to different levels, and not everyone will do every module. You'll kind of do it as as you increase throughout level 1, level 2, level 3. So it's certainly a big deal. And, I've talked about planning for the future. I've had guest David Schindler from the Tennessee Titans. I've talked about winning the interview. I had guest lecturer Aston Godwin, the founder of Making Good Trouble, which is a organizational leadership consulting firm that he just established. He's a doctoral student at USC right now. Also had Kayla Anderson of WKRN as a guest speaker, and Jared Stillman as a guest speaker from 102.5 The Game here in Nashville. He hosts the Jared and the GM show in the afternoon drive slot. So lots of good guests in this webinar series. Matt, you're certainly in a very good list, and I certainly thank you for coming on. We're going to talk about resumes, cover letters, demo reels, and then later on, we're going to talk about the 7 habits of highly effective people. So
awesome.
You might want to stick around for all of this. It's going to be a lot of great information. So Matt, let's talk.
Let's talk. I mean, I know that you guys have talked about winning the interview, but in order to even get into the interview, to get that opportunity, you have to make sure that your resume and cover letter and demo reel are on point, or else they're not even going to invite you in for the interview. So I've done up some slides. So I am going to share some of those with you guys. And we're going to start by talking about, resumes. And so if we open up, let's just talk at the most basic level. What is a resume? And what is a letter? So a resume in its most basic form is literally just a list of all of your accomplishments, achievements, work history, and abilities. Just put them all onto a paper and organize them so it makes sense, so that people can get at least a feel for who it is that you do by reading through a sheet of paper in 30 seconds to a minute, right? And so nearly every single employer, no matter what industry you're working in, is going to ask you for a resume. It doesn't matter if you're going to be the director of photography on a $250 million feature film, or if you're going to be, a grip for a student project. People are going to want to see your resume because it lists all of the things that you have done. And so it's really important for your resume to be on point and be looking good, because it shows potential employers that you are someone who is organized and diligent and on top of things. If your resume is not up to date, if you don't have up-to-date contact information, your latest job on there, and things like that, that really does not reflect well on you at all. So, and the accompanying document to a resume, oftentimes when you are applying to a job, is what we call a cover letter. And this is basically stating why you want to work for this job, why you are applying to that job, and why you would be a good fit for whatever the team is that you are applying to work with, what you bring to the table as an employee. While not all applications will require cover letters, a lot of them will, and it looks really good if when you send your resume and cover letter into the potential employer, if those are both, well formatted, looking good, it's going to show the potential employer that you are someone, like I was saying before, who is organized, who is diligent, and who's on top of things.
So Matt, a question about cover letters, and I've gotten differing advice on this, and I've done it both ways. I've created a cover letter in a separate document and attached it to an email. I've also written a cover letter and written it in the body of the email. So I felt like that was a way that was going to force them to actually read it because it was in the body of the email, and it might entice them to open up my resume and study it further. So what would you say to that?
So I would say it really depends on how you are applying to the job, because if you are going through a job board, like let's say you found a job on Indeed.com or you found a job on ZipRecruiter or something like that, you're going to be going through a computer program to submit, and you're not submitting to someone directly, and it's going to go through an algorithm. And so I'm actually going to talk here in a couple of slides about some of the things you need to keep in mind when you're doing that. But I would say I personally always have them as separate documents. And if I am directly emailing the hiring manager, if I know the person I am emailing is what we call the hiring manager, the person who's actually making that decision or is on the team member making that decision, then I might actually cut and paste it right into the body of the email. Otherwise, I'm definitely attaching it as a separate document. And because at least on a personal level, when I am applying to gigs and jobs and things like that, I have my cover letter and my resume and my reference sheet. I have a sheet that has my professional and personal references on it. All of those have matching styles and formatting and things like that. And so when you send them all together as one sort of package, it looks really good to the potential employer.
Okay. Well, that's certainly great advice. So let's deep dive into the resume. Let's break that down.
So let's talk about why we need to have an updated resume. A resume is a living, breathing document, okay? A resume is something that you should always be updating, and not, oh, now I need to apply for a job, maybe I should think about updating my resume. No, like you should always be updating your resume, even every couple of weeks, quite frankly, because especially if you are working in media production, you might work a gig for 2 weeks and then have a couple of weeks off and then work another gig for 6 weeks and things like that. And so after every gig you work, after every production that you are on, after every job you take, you need to be adding that to your resume. The most important thing that people look for when they are scanning through resumes is this person working? It doesn't even have to be in the field. Most of the people I know who are hiring media professionals would rather hire someone who, is consistently working, even if it's at McDonald's and doing other like photography and videography gigs on the side, than someone who's going to laze around and maybe take a gig here and there, even if they're more quote unquote artistic. They would rather see someone who has that hunger and that drive. I don't know about your experience, Corey, but in mine, like they want to see that you're working. So if you can show that you have constantly been working and constantly putting in the effort, and that that your resume, your portfolio is growing, that's really what we want to see.
Exactly. And I've had the same experiences too. It just depends on, and sometimes it depends on the hiring manager. Sometimes they want to see that extensive list of experience. And sometimes, and especially for, the age group that we're talking to right now, Matt, which would be high schoolers that don't have a ton of experience. So when you say showcase all of your abilities and keep a constant list of your skills, for a high school student that doesn't have much work experience, they might have one or two real jobs. And then would you say listing school projects and accomplishments?
So yeah, so absolutely, especially larger projects that you've worked on. So if you have, like, let's say if you have a YouTube page where you where you produce material for that, where you produce media on a YouTube channel. Or if you have even school project, you can still say the abilities that you have learned in your classes. So, you can have one of your abilities can be Adobe Premiere Pro, right? I know you guys certified that in your school. So Adobe Premiere Pro is, even if you haven't, edited a feature length film, you still have at least the baseline understanding of how to work the program, how to do basic nonlinear editing. And so, even if it's not saying like, yeah, I've edited like 14 features or whatever, just having those abilities on there and showing that you are working, even if it's on side projects and student projects and things like that, the more the merrier. You don't want to make it all scuttled, but it is something that's really good to have.
All right.
So when you are building your resume, there are a couple things that you have to have on your resume. The first and most important thing is contact details. So
make sure it's correct.
Yes, your name, your email, your phone number, your physical address. And if you are someone who already has an established brand or presence on social media that is for your actual artwork or for your media production, I would include social media handles and a personal website in that. I would not include like a personal social media handle if you just have an Instagram, to, send out pictures of whatever to your friends. I would not put that on there personally, unless that is like a real, true, direct reflection of your individual style. And, I teach a class, all about branding yourself, but that is a different story for a different day, I guess I would say. But unless you have a dedicated Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, that is just your artwork, just your media production, I would shy away from putting your personal social media handles on your resume. I've seen people turn in resumes that look really great and don't even have their names on them. So, it's these little things that people can forget. So you need to have a list of key skills. And so if you are going into the media production field, you definitely want to know, okay, so what camera builds do you have experience working on? If you're going for cinematography, what editing platforms do you have experience with? Are you comfortable with? If you're going for editing jobs, do you know Final Cut? Do you know Premiere? Do you know Media Composer? Do you know After Effects? These kinds of things. If you are, any sort of technical skills that you have that directly relate, especially to the position for which you are applying, are going to be really important. Your employment history, what jobs have you had? Doesn't matter if it's production or not production. People want to know that you're working. Lists of technical and software skills. So like I was saying before, Premiere, you want to have a section in there on technical skills. You want to have things like, if you know basic like word processing or spreadsheets, Microsoft Office in general, that kind of stuff. A lot of jobs, even if they are especially in the more creative sectors, like there are a lot of jobs that my students go for working at like marketing firms and things like that you have to be creative and be able to use Adobe Creative Cloud, but you also have to be able to use Microsoft Office. You have to know how to use, have basic typing skills, those kind of things. So you want to show that, so you want to show potential employers that you do have those as well. Career overview achievements. So that is, have any of your films or things like that been in any festivals? Have they won any school awards or regional awards or things like that? Educational qualifications. So for you kids who are in high school, what high school do you go to? When are you going to graduate? And if you are in an academy like you guys are, what academy are you in? Especially in the academy system in MNPS. Your personal attributes. This is something especially that I would recommend for younger students, like high school students. A lot of my students are fresh out of high school, 18, 19 years old, and they don't have a ton of work experience. And so I would say, not necessarily just to fill out the page, but also to give the employer an idea of who you are. You might have like a personal mission statement or, a list of, at the beginning of your resume that says like, if I'm saying like, I am, a diligent, hardworking person who is looking to make a name for myself in the film and media production arena or field. I am, hardworking, dedicated, punctual, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, just to sort of give at least an overview of why it even is in the first place that this resume is showing up on this, on this hiring manager's desk.
So how many, with that list of personal attributes, how many adjectives would you suggest? I would say
I would say
probably
I would
three.
usually. Well, I would usually have, if it's going to be like a sentence at the like a little paragraph at the top, like 2 or 3 sentences, maybe with
Mhm.
a couple adjectives in each sentence
Mhm.
that really says. So if I was doing it for me, I'd say like I am I am a, if I was in high school, an aspiring audio engineer who has experience working in XYZ, but am eager to learn more, something like that.
Okay.
And then add, I am punctual, I am diligent, hardworking, organized, whatever it is, whatever adjectives that you really think of. But one of the things I'm going to show you here in a slide or two is that you're actually probably going to want to change around the verbiage that you use depending on the job that you are applying for. And so
Right.
the last thing I have on there before we get to that is references. What most people do, and what I would recommend that you do as well, is at the bottom just say references available upon request, for 2 reasons. A, that way if they ask you for references, you've made it to the next round of the screening process. And B, you can, depending on the job that you're applying for, you may want to use a different reference because maybe someone who knows someone who works at the company or
Mhm.
something along those lines. You may want to use different references for different jobs depending on what you're applying to. So you can make your resume in a bunch of different places. I would recommend for most people, though, to use Microsoft Word or another word processor, right? Because
There's a lot of good templates out there.
there's a lot of great templates out there, whether it's in Word or Google Docs or Pages or whatever. You can make them look snappier on something like Canva.com or in Photoshop. But one of the problems when doing that is that if you do it in one of those programs, you'll have to export it as a PDF and then submit it. And then the computer programs that actually scan the resumes that are submitted online are more likely to make a mistake or just miss all the information on a PDF than they are on a Word document or a word processor document. So I tell all of my students to make sure that they have it either as Pages, Google Docs, or Microsoft Word. Especially if it's a Google Doc, you can export it as a Microsoft Word document because that is the most reliable way to get through all of the scanning algorithms that go on when you apply through almost any company's website. So, but one of the biggest things that you have to do when you are building your resume, building your cover letters and things like that is to adapt them to whatever job it is that you are applying for. So if you look through a job posting and you need to understand when they are posting these positions with the responsibilities, the requirements to fulfill the job, etc., they're just putting down a bunch of keywords in there. And the computer, when you submit your resume, when you submit your cover letter for the job, it's not just like when you hit the submit button, an email doesn't pop up in the hiring manager's inbox. It says, oh, Corey Burton just applied to open position X. No, it goes through, they're all scanned through a computer algorithm. And based on the percentage of keywords that it finds and other things like that, it is going to weed out cover letters and resumes that don't hit a certain threshold of 50, 60, 70% of keywords that it's expecting to see. So what I tell my students and what you really need to do, read the job listings very carefully. And if they say if you are applying for a job as, let's just say, an assistant editor, right? An assistant editor position. Well, in the job description, it'll say something like must be comfortable with nonlinear editing platforms, including Adobe Premiere, Final Cut Pro, etc. Must be organized, have good, strong file organization. Must be expected to be punctual and work odd hours, things like that. I want to make sure that all those phrases are in my resume and my cover letter. So if it says expect, knowledge of Adobe Premiere Pro, I'm not just putting Adobe Creative Cloud in my resume. I'm putting Adobe Premiere Pro. I'm putting in, like, as in the personal attributes section when I'm writing about me, I'm saying I am an organized, diligent, punctual person who is willing to put in the extra time. Read the job postings and make your resumes and cover letter match. I cannot express that enough to anyone who is applying for jobs, because you need to understand how these keywords work and how they use those to filter out resumes and filter out cover letters that don't hit a certain threshold. And so like personally, like when if I'm applying for jobs, I actually keep 3 different resume templates available to myself at all time. I have a production focused resume template, a administrative focused resume template, and a teaching focused resume template, because those are the 3 sort of facets that I work in. And so I have, as I apply to jobs, I'm using a different template every time and adjusting each of those templates to each different job that I'm applying for based upon what keywords are in the job posting.
That is, that's something that a lot of people, I mean, including myself, I don't always think about the algorithms and the keywords and how to make it pop. And that's something that I think is important for people to know, especially young people that are more in the digital age than I was at the point that they're at in their job seeking, job seeking part in life. And
yeah, absolutely. And like, you might be like, oh, I would have been such a good fit that job. I wonder why I didn't get an interview. Well, you might have not gotten an interview because you just didn't have the right keywords in your resume.
And it just never reached the surface. And
or something like, you had, instead of writing well organized, you might have written you are creative. And while they may want someone who is really creative, the word organized is more important than the word creative to them. And so they, I hope that you guys understand what I'm saying there, where like these keywords are so important when you are writing your resumes if you want to get in front of the hiring manager.
Good deal. And I really like the idea of having different templates.
Absolutely.
Especially if you're somebody that bounces between different, I guess
different
you'd call it genres, different facets, different categories.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, like I have a lot of my students will have, graduate and they'll be like, well, I'm a producer screenwriter. Okay, well, you better have 2 separate resumes, one for your producing and one for your screenwriting. Exactly. Because even though those are both production jobs, they have many different things that they incorporate many different elements, and you want to focus on different things. Like if I have someone who is a producer screenwriter, for example, and as a screenwriter, I'm going to put all of like my published screenplays and things that have been turned into films at the top of the resume. Whereas if I'm a producer, I want things that I produce and not necessarily written at the top. And I want to emphasize my understanding of bifurcation of rights and, understanding all of the legal aspects and what it's producing. Whereas in my screenwriting, I want to emphasize the creative. So maybe I'll put my awards section higher up in the resume. So even where you put things in the resume matters, because the further down it is on the page, the less likely it is for the hiring manager to actually look at it. They've done some studies about what part of the actual page are hiring managers looking at using eye tracking technology on computers. And after about a third to half of the way down, the fall off is incredible. The meat of what you want to show to people needs to be right there at the top.
And to throw in some other concepts, some other production concepts, it I don't want to say it follows exactly, but it mirrors the rule of thirds, where your important stuff wants to be upper left. Because they're going to look upper left and they're going to scan down to the right from there. And I think it's, it's like anything else. It's like an attention grabber in an essay. It's like, answering the question, tell me a little bit about yourself. That can make the difference. If you can grab their attention in the very first part of your resume, because you really only get 8 seconds and they're kind of halfway looking at it most of the time anyway. Yep, so
absolutely. I've done plenty of hiring in my life, and I, for better or for worse, like most of the time I'll know within 10 seconds of looking at the resume if I'm even going to want to interview a person or not, based on, not necessarily like where they went to school, but just, does this person know how to present themselves? Because that actually is a big important part of a lot of what you do, is how do you come off to people, and for better or for worse, it's a fact of life. And so showing that you have that, that you are well organized, that you do understand what you're doing and things like that is going to go an awfully long way. But the other big part of showing off what you can do, if your resume puts all of your abilities on paper, your demo reel puts it in motion. And your demo reel, especially for your students who want to become editors, actors, production designers, directors, anyone who really wants to be either, that is really directly related to filmmaking and film production needs to have a demo reel. And like your resume, your demo reel is a living, breathing thing. Now, this time, obviously, it's a short film, 1 to 2 minutes, but it is still always going to be adapting and changing with whatever most recent projects you have worked on. So let's talk about, I know you want to talk about demo reels, so let's get right into it. I want to talk about them for a little bit. And then I've got about 3 different ones that I want to show you that are from my students, all of whom are, I grabbed 3 demo reels from students who are like 18, 19, who are about the same age as maybe a hair older than your high school students, but just to give you an idea of what a demo reel for someone who is in this age group should look like. So
absolutely. And before you get rolling on that, like every guest speaker I spoke with, Kayla Anderson, Jared Stillman, and David Schindler, all 3 of them unanimously said that, and all 3 of them have been in a hiring position and have been in a spot where they've sifted through so many demo reels, but they all 3 said that is the most important thing. The resume is great.
Without a doubt.
The interview is good if you can make an impression, but that demo reel is the thing that pops. And they said,
because it's tangible.
Exactly.
Because the demo reel is living proof of what you can do.
Exactly.
Right. It is, it feels like, the proof is in the pudding, or picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, both of those are appropriate here as the train goes by my house. That, you can say you've got all these skills, but, people may have to take that with a grain of salt until you can show them, oh, actually, hey, take a look at this. This is actually something I really can do. So your demo reel is a video that showcases your best skills and work to potential clients and employers. And it's the first thing that other people will see, especially if you are, if you have like a personal website or something like that needs to be on your splash page. And this is your, this is the media and film production equivalent to a business card. Like your demo reel is you, and you need to spend a lot of time and effort making sure that your demo reel looks on point. Because if you have a good looking demo reel, if you have a slick demo reel, like that is going to take you so far. Because they're going to be like, oh, how did they get that to look this good? I want that aesthetic in my next project. I need to get this guy or girl on board. So a couple tips when it comes to making effective demo reels. A couple things that are important. The first is consistent eye lines. I don't know how much you teach about eye lines in your production, especially when it comes to editing, but having consistent eye lines especially from shot to shot, if you are going to be cutting out shots within a scene, you need to make sure that it makes sense to the viewer. You want to do your best to keep matching color grading as well. It's going to just make it look better. Same with matching the thematic elements. Your pacing should be, you don't want it to be too slow. You want to keep a good, steady pace throughout, and you want to make sure that you get appropriate royalty-free music. Royalty-free means not something that is copywritten. You can find royalty-free music all over YouTube, or you can pay certain services like Soundstripe, for instance, that have access to really high-quality, good royalty-free music that you can use for your projects. They cost maybe like a yearly fee. I have a Soundstripe subscription, and it's saved my butt a million times over. But you need to make sure that you have good royalty-free music that is appropriate for the tone of what you are showing in your demo reel.
Exactly, and it's a highlight reel and of everything that you've done. So I don't think you need to, if you edited a movie, I don't think you need to put the whole movie or even just the first 15 minutes. You want to put like this thing should be probably what 90 seconds.
No more than 2 minutes. We tell our students 1 to 2 minutes. I've never seen a good reel that's longer than 3. And frankly, if you're good, it's going to be good in 90 seconds. I think 90 seconds is a great time frame to shoot for. But if you're up to 2 minutes, you're fine. Once you get over that, frankly, you've probably done something wrong with your editing and your pacing. Yeah, and it's and you're choosing the best of the best. So you want to take the very best clip that you have made at the very best time. So you're going to have to pick through it and really figure out
what makes that splash. And you can get feedback from somebody else. You can say, hey, watch
absolutely.
this. Tell me what you think the part that leaps off the page.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you should use.
And you need to match your music to that as well.
Exactly.
And you need to match your music to that. So now your demo reel, first of all, it has to have your name and contact information so that when someone sees it, they know how to get in touch with you. Not just like, oh, who made that? I can be like, oh, well, you can have the world, again, you can have the world's greatest demo reel, but it doesn't have your name and your email address on it. Hire you to do that same thing for their project. So, and again, same thing about social media handles. I repeat this a lot. If you are someone who is trying to be, especially like an independent producer or an independent videographer, things like that, you probably should have a social media account dedicated just to your work. Because that is one of the, in this day and age, it's one of the best ways to network. And furthermore, it is, it's a great way to show your work off to the world. But another thing that's really important for your demo reel is to make sure it's updated. Like the resume, your demo reel should always be evolving to demonstrate your own personal growth, the best work that you've done, the most recent work that you've done, to show that you can work in different genres and things like that. So going back to your point about as far as like social media accounts and personal websites and things like that,
I've just recently gotten into Adobe Spark. I've just recently gotten into it because they gave us Adobe Creative Cloud access, and our cluster lead in MNPS has really kind of made it a point to teach us all Adobe Spark, because they have a Spark Video, Spark Post, and Spark Pages. Spark Pages is incredible. It gives you a website template. It's not like an active URL. It's just kind of like a informational page that it's almost like you could create a web-based resume in it. Now, I don't think it would work with these algorithms of the online stuff, but it's a great place to house your demo reels, your pertinent information.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it could be a great resource for you to use, because there's so many things you can do designing it. You can put pictures in the window, so as they scroll through like your contact information, your list of projects that you've done, accolades, things like that, it could be another layer of your resume. You create your resume on Word, and then create your like production resume on Adobe Spark, and you can illustrate it with pictures. You can embed YouTube clips in there. There's a lot of different things you can do to make it look really neat and really clean and just great. So it's a great resource to learn.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead, and I've got 3 different demo reels to show you guys. So let's go ahead and watch these 3. They're just going to go back to back to back right here.
All right, here we go.
All right. So these are from 3 of my former students. That's our first one. We've got a second one here for directing. obviously a very different tone in that one, but we get an idea of who she is as an artist for sure. We got one more right here. So that is our final one there. So I think the reason I chose these three is because they all have a very different feel, but I think you get a really good idea of who each one of those people is as an artist and as a filmmaker, right? The first one that we saw, super straightforward, no nonsense, does a lot of commercial productions. Second one, Anna, very, very artistic, very in touch with emotions and things like that. And Price, on the third one, you sort of get a juxtaposition, kind of like a little bit of both worlds in there. And so I think that each one of those, each one of those kids was 18 or 19 when they made those.
Exactly.
And so you don't need as you can see, you don't need a ton of footage to still have a demo reel that looks really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see where the different roles that they're going for, or kind of where they feel like they're at this point in time. Obviously, those will evolve as they get and they find their niche. With Anna's, you see the different types of shots that she directed that evoke different emotions, the suspense, the anxiety, just the overall creative ways of kind of creating each mood. And you can kind of see how that all ebbs and flows, the psychology of it. You can kind of see how the brilliance of that played out.
Yeah, and that's matched in the tension of the music that she had as well.
Exactly, and the music, she did a really great job of selecting the music, and she did and it flowed really nicely. It kind of like you almost felt like you were in the movie, but it was a ton of different shots from different scenes and things like that. You can kind of tell it was cut up, but which is kind of the point. So Philip says, "Hey, I didn't really edit this, but here's a few of my shots. I really liked the shot between the deer antlers as a camera operator.
The magnifying glass, the deer antlers, and so that reel is geared towards camera operation, right? That entire reel is just on his ability as a gaffer and a camera operator. He has a completely different reel for editing. Corey has actually taught both Price and Philip, but Philip is he's one of the best editing students I've ever had, but like he's a whiz of an editor, but he actually really wants to be a camera operator. So we geared his reel just towards his gaffing and his camera operation for this specific reason. And because again, like your resume, you probably want to have multiple different templates for your reel.
Yeah. And the thing I really liked about Price is he's really showed his creative side, his ability to operate advanced editing software. So you could tell there was some After Effects stuff in there. You could tell he could do some really funky stuff. Would be a tremendous commercial editor because he has that pop and pizzazz. Really good highlight editor for like a sports team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something like that would be incredible. I think would I could see with the way that looked, I could see him being like an NHL, NBA, kind of a more of a faster paced sport.
Oh yeah, cutting up highlights. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he could. I mean, with that, he can make golf highlights look fun. Yeah. So, all three of them did a tremendous job. Philip and Price, they were a pleasure to teach there. In editing one, they were well beyond editing one when I had them. So, it made it easy. They were kind of my extra set of hands when I was there with them. So, and I Bleav it was Philip. Who did the most creative edit test for editing one because I provided them with construction clips.
Oh yeah, I remember.
To make it unique, so it's something that they've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So I had him create the commercial, and he actually did a sitcom intro. He asked me, I said, hey, if you get really creative with it, we'll see what you got. If you're gonna do it, go all out, and
Yeah.
he did. And
Absolutely,
he included the shot of me climbing the scaffold, which is always good. So, but the point of a good demo reel is to make that pop and to really get the viewer locked in to the point.
Yeah, and to give the viewer an idea of who you are as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're a camera operator, you're an artist. Even if you're a gaffer, you're an artist. You are. Your medium happens to be light, but you're still an artist. So I guess if I leave you, if we're gonna sort of wrap up this resume demo reel section, I would say you need to leave the hiring manager and the people with an idea of who you are as an artist, as a worker, as an employee, and you need to make yourself stand out. And so I hope that some of these tricks and tips that I've provided here during this part will help you get there and help you with your job hunt and your job search.
Absolutely. And to take it one step further, you've got to be able to pick out whatever job you want, whether it's in radio, whether it's a gaffer, whether it's a camera operator, editor, director, writer,
whatever it is.
Whatever it is, you need to figure out probably within that 90 seconds, you probably need to pick 3, maybe 4 qualities, things that really make you stand out.
Each one of those reels that you just saw, each one of them was no longer than 60 seconds. They were all almost exactly 60 seconds, and they all had shots from either 3 or 4 different projects.
Exactly.
And because you don't want to be throwing in 15 different projects, then it's just going to be confusing.
Just pick your 3 best.
Yeah, pick your 3 best, pick your 4 best, and pick your best shots from those.
And that showcase different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like with Philip, he showcased. I think the golf one really showcased his ability to create cool, funky shots with the basic static.
Yeah, but then you saw you saw the handheld shot he did in the first one where he goes around the character who lights up a cigarette. That's a very difficult handheld shot to do. And so
it's steady and it shows great movement.
And it was also very well lit, and it's also really hard if you're going to have that kind of handheld camera movement to have good even lighting and keep the lighting out of the shot.
Exactly. And with the attorneys at Law Commercial, I was really impressed with the creativity of just kind of finding ways to make a commercial like that funny and interesting and cool.
Yeah, it is.
And thinking outside the box, like using everything within your environment to showcase that and to make it interesting. Like he had a great transition shot at the end to where they had the graphic come between the deer antlers. I really thought that was a brilliant way to bring up the graphic of the contact information. So, in summary, find 3, maybe 4 projects, take the best of the best, make sure those 3 things don't all showcase the exact same thing. Make sure you pick 3 projects that showcase different aspects of your talent so that they see that you're not a one-trick pony, and to see that you know what your strengths are, and you know how to showcase it and make it look good. Pick appropriate music, which I really impressed with Anna and her directing reel with the music that she selected. And then just, again, it's always important. Make sure your contact information is not only at the beginning, not only at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, just all throughout would be fine,
Yeah, I mean, I usually tell people at the beginning and at the end, and then if you're going to post it on YouTube, obviously in the description of the video, that kind of thing. So
absolutely.
But yeah, and then let the work speak for itself, and always be improving it. So
yeah, absolutely. Just constant thing. You're shuffling things in and out. You can make 3 different ones to send. I mean, you can go get as creative and as funky as you want. So, Matt, I certainly thank you for joining me in this module. This is the one we talked about: resumes, cover letters, but the ever more important demo reel. And I'm glad we spent a lot of time on demo reels. So
awesome.
Stay tuned. Matt's going to join me for the 7 habits of highly effective people. That is later on in module 4. So module 1 is the planning. You've already seen that. This is module 2. So check out the one, how to win the interview. And then Matt will come back and join me here in Module 4. So,
All right.
I want to thank you, Matt, and
Thanks, Corey.
Appreciate you. And
of course,
that'll do it.
All right. We'll see you next time.
All right. And cut.
Sweet.